I'm going to be brutally honest, and I'm probably not the first one that is going to be honest about this subject matter, and I probably won't be the last. In short, Nuno Espirito Santo must simplify the system, pick a more disciplined midfield, and stop relying on Lucas Paqueta as a creative force in this West Ham United team. Nuno must realise that in order to win games, we need players who have the energy, a defensive balance, and who are willing to fight for every ball. I'm not saying Lucas doesn't fight for every ball, but he certainly doesn't always win the ball, and he certainly loses it a lot. Nuno needs to bench inconsistent players, and the Villa defeat exposed those exact weaknesses. We already knew that Paqueta might be a bit of a hindrance to the team when he returned from his one match ban. But we've got to remember we did exceptionally well without him, and there's no reason why we can't do exceptionally well without him again in the future. Look, if you're new to the West Ham Voice, a QR code's appearing in the top corner. After the show, click on that QR code. It takes you straight to the subscription page. You can become a subscriber of the channel. If you like the content, please hit the like button below the video. If you like to hype the video, you can do that. Other people can watch it. And if you're feeling generous, you can become a member of the channel for $1.99 a month, and you get extra content for that. And all the money raised from the membership scheme goes to Prostate Cancer UK. Look, I've got to be honest with you. I'm in a bit of a somber mood the day after the game against Aston Villa, because despite playing exceptionally well for long parts of the game, we still came away with no points. Sure, Villa are the informed team at the moment in the Premier League. That was their 10th win in 11 games. But there were times that throughout the game, that we were a match for them. We outfought them at times. We outsmarted them. But that's been the standard of this season, isn't it? Or certainly under Nuno, that we're doing well. Everyone is saying we're playing better football, but we simply can't keep hold of a lead, and we certainly can't keep a clean sheet. And the thing that concerns me the most is that despite playing exceptionally well, if this was our best and we're still coming away with no points, what's it going to be like when we're not playing well? How are we going to be then? And undoubtedly, we're going to get those moments where we're not going to play well and probably expect to get nothing out of a game. But perhaps that's the answer. Perhaps, we ought to play scrappy and get points rather than playing really well and not get any points. I recall under the David Moyes era, there were fans that were saying more or less that. Fans were saying, I hate the way Moyes sets our team up with a low block, etc., etc. And I'd rather us play well and lose than for us to play crap and win. I think at this moment in time, I'd be quite happy to play crap if it means winning games. Look, there have been improvements. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Because what we're seeing right now, we're seeing a team that's putting a lot of effort in, but we're just not getting the wins. Look, apart from the Liverpool game recently, on the whole, we have been playing really well. But the last wins that we got were the 3-1 victories over Newcastle and the 3-2 victory over Burnley, which were at the beginning of November. That was well over a month ago now. Since then, we've drawn 3, we've lost 2. And in those 5 games, we've been ahead in 3 of them, but unable to hold the lead. So in essence, I totally get why Nuno sometimes wants to shut up shop when we're leading, to defend that lead. I kind of understand his thinking, because when a team isn't winning regularly, the manager has to find a way to get us a win in order to lift the spirits. And if it means parking the bus, then I guess so be it. But alas, we don't have the squad that's good enough to defend the lead, nor do we have the firepower to go and continue attacking and scoring more goals than the opposition that we're playing against. Now, that was sorely highlighted by the quality of the subs that Aston Villa made throughout the game on Sunday. The players they brought on were as equal to the ones that they were replacing. But for us, our bench is really weak. As I said some weeks back, we've got a good first 11, plus maybe 2, maybe 3 more on top of that, but then that's it. Whereas Aston Villa could have probably brought on any of their 9 subs and probably been, equal to what they already had on the pitch. When we think about it, we're reliant on one striker, Callum Wilson, because let's be honest, Nicholas Füllkrug is a busted flush. We're reliant on 3 central defenders, 2 of whom continue to prove that they're probably no longer Premier League class, with only Jean-Claire Todibo showing some real quality of late. He really has improved. We're over-reliant on our wingers, who are both not really firing on all cylinders, that being Bowen and Somerville. And taking it back to Lucas Paqueta, we're over-reliant on one creative player in this squad. One creative player in the whole squad. And all those players that we're, of all the players that we're over-reliant on, it is Paqueta who, unfortunately, is letting us down more often than not. Sure, many of you would argue that it's unfair to point the finger on just one player for our defeat against Aston Villa. But for me, the turning point in the game came on the 49th minute, 4 minutes into the second half. We had just finished a fantastic first half, deservedly leading Aston Villa by 2-1. We were frustrating them, as I said. We were controlling the game, or we gave them not enough time to control the game. We were in their faces, and they didn't like it one bit. And all they could do was to commit silly little fouls that Anthony Taylor allowed. He allowed them to get away with in order to break up our play and break up our rhythm. And you can see that they were rattled. So it was obvious that Unai Emery was going to come out with a very different game plan for the second half. And it was almost inevitable that Nuno's team talk at halftime would have probably been, keep it simple, keep it tight, continue to get in their faces, don't give them any space, keep pressing, and don't make any silly mistakes that might give them any momentum. So what does Lucas Paqueta do 4 minutes into the second half? He drops deep to pick up the ball. It's his trademark. We know he does that. But his procrastination on the ball led him to lose the ball way too easily. And on the back of that, they went on to score straight after. And that second equaliser really changed the momentum of the game. That led to Aston Villa's revival, and from that point on, the game turned. All that hard work that we did in the first half was just undone. Aston Villa got the momentum, and with their strong squad, I said, whenever they brought another player on, it allowed them to push on and on and on. And in the end, the tide turned. It was frustrating, to say the least. And as the game progressed, they grew stronger and more organised, whilst our momentum just slowly ebbed away. Look, fans complain about the subs that Nuno made and the timings of them. And I agree that perhaps the introduction of Callum Wilson was too late. But with what other options does he have on the bench? What could he do? All we have as backup are players like Thomas Souček, who I love, but he's not going to offer the kind of pace or directness of the players that he's replacing, like Somerville, etc. Our squad, all right, I know Somerville's end product is a little bit lacking as well at the moment, but at least he's got the pace to be able to, make the defenders think about what they need to do to try and combat him. Our squad depth is desperately lacking in quality, which is a culmination, obviously, of the years of poor ownership and the past managerial decisions that has led us to this point. Not just the board, but Moyes has been, involved in this. Lopetegui has, and so did Graham Potter. And so Nuno has been given a poison chalice to try and sort out. And as much as I have been saying up to now that when the transfer window opens, our priorities has got to be a striker and a central defender, I'm beginning to think that we also need a winger. We also need another creative, combative midfielder. We need options, because the likes of Souček, a great servant that he's been, and the likes of Rodriguez are not the answers from the bench. But the transfer window is still under 3 weeks away. And we've got several games coming up before them. So Nuno needs to take action now. Look, when you think about it, Nuno was brave enough to drop James Ward Prowse from the squad completely. He's not in his plans. And after some poor performances, Nuno was again brave enough to drop Max Kilman from the lineup and put him on the bench. And we've got to be honest now, because after the poor performances by Lucas Paqueta, Nuno has got to bite that bullet and he's got to drop Paqueta from the next lineup. He's likely to upset Paqueta in doing that, but if he does, then that's what a manager has to do. He's got to make decisions, because it's got to be what's best for the team, not what's best for one individual player. Defensively, we've improved without Kilman in the team. All right, we're still conceding goals, but overall, there seems to be more, direct effort from the defense. Weird me saying that, considering we can't keep a clean sheet. But it wasn't any better. It was actually worse with Kilman in the side. In midfield, we've become more combative without James Ward Prowse in the team. So now it's time to become even more difficult to break down by not putting Paqueta in the starting lineup. I had a dilemma before the game. I thought maybe Wilson would start, but it would have been at the expense of either Magassa or Potts not playing. But now I'm beginning to think that if we want Wilson on the pitch, we've got to drop Paqueta in order for that to happen. Because for me, the players behind in midfield, you can put Fernandes further forward. He's got an engine on him. He can do, all right, not the same kind of passes that Paqueta tries to do, but he'd be more combative. And then you can have the pivot behind with Magassa and Potts. And I think Fernandes will probably deliver more. Look at the way he broke down that Aston Villa side within the first minute in 30 seconds and scored that goal. And that's what we need, because Paqueta, unfortunately, has become a liability, or not has been a constant liability. There are times when he does the fabulous, but how many games do we have to wait for him to do the fabulous pass in order to sort of say, well, there's a consistency there? He's not consistent. Look, his stats for the game against Aston Villa are interesting. Two key passes that didn't get through. A high pass rate, success rate of 83% overall is great. But the biggest stat of the day for Paqueta was he lost possession 12 times throughout the game. And as mentioned earlier, one of those possessions led to the whole game being changed because they scored from breaking it down against him, getting the ball off him, and making it 2-2. Look, I don't like picking out one individual player, but when I look around me, there are other players that maybe not really on par. Diouf is, I kind of said in the post-match review straight after the game that I'm beginning to think that I wonder if Diouf had come in. If Diouf had come in as being the backup to an established left back, I think he would have benefited from that. But he's come in and he's now the main man. And sometimes he's good and there are other times not so great. So there are other players that aren't kind of delivering. But when you have a player in the middle of the park who is meant to control the game and take it forward, but he keeps losing the ball, and when he loses the ball, it means that we suffer we concede a goal, then you've got to do something about that. And I think Nuno has got to bench Lucas Paqueta in the next game until Paqueta shows the defensive work rate and positional discipline that's required. Harsh, but necessary. Look, we're coming to a make or break period for West Ham after the Man City game that no one thinks we're going to get anything from. The next run of games are winnable games. If Nuno picks a clear midfield spine of Magassa, Potts and Fernandes, then he can start to grind out results. If he puts Paqueta in there, then he's going to have to drop who? Can't drop any of the back four if he's playing a back four. That means he's either going to have to drop Bowen or Somerville or continue not having a striker in the lineup. And many fans get upset at the fact that we're not having a striker. So he can't drop Magassa. He can't drop Potts. And for me, he can't drop Fernandes. Those three players in the middle of the park are what's driving us forward, because we've now got to start grinding out results, and we've got to start climbing out of trouble. And if we've got that midfield three of Magassa, Potts, and Fernandes, I think we stand a better chance of climbing out of trouble. But if Paqueta stays in there and takes the place of one of those players, then I think it kind of weakens us. We need grit, not glamour at this stage of the league, you know. But even then, it might be too little, too late. Look, I hate to say this, but if a decent bid does come in for him in January, do we bite the bullet and let him go in order to use that money to then get other players in who could probably deliver more? I don't know. I think Paqueta, as some fans have been saying, has been living off the pass in the final in Prague, you know, but that was now 2 years ago. That's a distant memory, you know, and we're really banging trouble at this moment in time in the league. You know, I did say I didn't think we'd be in a relegation dogfight, but here we are. We're in it. So something has got to change. Nuno's got to do something. I know he keeps looking for answers and keeps trying different things, and I get that and I understand that. But maybe the answer is he's just got to drop Lucas and he's got to start picking a striker instead of Lucas in order to try and get us the goals. The January window is going to be absolutely crucial. You know, he's got to go and get a striker. Maybe I still think a central defender. And now I'm thinking maybe we do need that attacking midfielder to give us an alternative option to Lucas Paqueta. Maybe I'm being harsh. You tell me. Tell me what you think. Should he be dropped? Should he stay in the team? Should other players get dropped instead? Bowen's not been on fire lately either. So maybe him. I don't know. You tell me. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Sorry it's so somber. But having come away from that game, at the beginning of that game, you know, that first half in that game was so fantastic. We were like cock a hoop. We're thinking, how great is this? Let's keep this up. But unfortunately, you need strength in depth in order to keep that momentum going. Those players are grinding themselves into the ground. And if we don't get the resources we need as backup, who are as good as the players that we've got on the pitch at the start, then that relegation dogfight might continue for the rest of the season.